West Baltimore, Maryland, a place shaped by industry, music, ambition, and collapse. Once, this area thrived as a garment and manufacturing district. Pennsylvania Avenue pulsed with life, known nationally as Black Broadway, where jazz, blues, and soul spilled from theaters and clubs into the streets. But as factories closed and deindustrialization hollowed out the economy, opportunity vanished. By the late 1980s, the crack epidemic swept through the city, leaving addiction, homelessness, and violence in its wake. Entire neighborhoods deteriorated. West Baltimore became one of the most dangerous urban zones in the United States, marked by gang warfare, drug trafficking, and despair. It was within this environment that Joseph Roy Metheny, sometimes spelled Metheny, lived out a double life. By day, he was a quiet, well-mannered forklift operator, known as dependable and polite. By night, he descended into alcoholism, heroin, and crack cocaine, eventually becoming violent. Today, Joe Metheny is remembered by a nickname that both horrifies and distorts: the Cannibal. He would later claim that he murdered at least 10 people and ground their flesh into hamburger meat, selling it to unsuspecting customers from a roadside barbecue stand. These stories, repeated endlessly in tabloids and online, became legend. Yet much of what Joe said was never verified. Court records, witness testimony, and forensic evidence reveal a story far darker and more tragic than sensational myth. A story of addiction, abandonment, violence, and victims whose lives were reduced to rumors. Joseph Roy Metheny was born on March 2, 1955, in Essex, Maryland, near North Point Boulevard. He was one of 6 children born to Audrey Earle and Julian Metheny. The family lived in poverty. When Joe was 6 years old, his father, a chronic alcoholic, died in a car accident. With her husband gone, Audrey worked multiple jobs to keep food on the table. The children often fended for themselves. Later in life, Joe claimed that his mother abandoned him, placed him in foster care, and even died while he was young. These claims were disputed. Audrey insisted she remained in her children's lives and described Joe as polite, intelligent, and an above-average student. But resentment lingered, and resentment would harden. At 18, Joe enlisted in the U.S. Army. He was stationed in Germany, where he began using heroin. Later, he falsely claimed to have served in combat during the Vietnam War, though official records show U.S. involvement had ended by 1973 before his enlistment. After returning home, Joe attempted to build a normal life. He found work as a forklift operator. Co-workers described him as intelligent, soft-spoken, and known for elaborate practical jokes. But by night, he drank heavily, often finishing an entire bottle of Southern Comfort, and used heroin and crack cocaine. He drifted between shelters and homeless encampments scattered across South Baltimore. In 1988, he had a son with a girlfriend who also struggled with addiction. The couple lived together briefly. Joe worked at Joe Stein and Sons Pallet Company, located off Caton Avenue and Washington Boulevard. His boss, Joe Stein, allowed him to move into a trailer on the property, serving as an informal security guard. But in the summer, his girlfriend left, taking their child with her. The loss devastated him. He sank deeper into addiction, anger, and isolation. The first confirmed murder occurred in July of 1994. A 39-year-old Kathy Magaziner had grown up near Lake Erie, graduating from South Bay Island High School in 1969. She later moved to California before settling in Baltimore in 1980. Separated, battling heroin addiction, and turning to sex work, Kathy lived on the margins of society. That summer night, Joe picked her up and brought her back to the trailer. They had sex. Then, Joe wrapped an extension cord around her neck and strangled her. After killing her, he stole her money. He carried her nude body into the woods behind the pallet factory and buried her in a shallow grave. 6 months later, he returned. He dug up her remains, removed her skull, and later claimed he attempted to have sex with it before discarding it in a roadside ditch. Only fragments of her body were ever recovered. In the summer of 1995, Joe crossed the Patapsco River, heading toward the Brooklyn Park area and Reed Bird Island Sanctuary, where a homeless encampment known as Tent City had formed. He was searching for his former girlfriend and the man he believed was now exploiting her. What happened next is partially documented and partially claimed. Joe admitted to killing 2 men after questioning them about his ex-girlfriend. One of them was Randall Brewer. The second was identified only as Randy, his last name redacted. Joe said he murdered them with an axe, claiming they had robbed him of $300. He also confessed to killing 2 sex workers and an African-American fisherman. He claimed to have beaten the fisherman with a steel pipe, fearing the man might report him to police. Joe said he weighted all the bodies with rocks and dumped them into the Patapsco River. On August 2, 1995, the decomposing bodies of Randall Brewer and his companion were discovered beneath a mattress and debris near the encampment. The following day, Everett McDowell was found dead, his skull split by an axe. Police arrested Larry Amos, a resident of a rival encampment, after finding an axe nearby. Joe was also arrested for the double homicide, but the charges were dropped 18 months later due to insufficient evidence. In November of 1996, Joe walked free. He returned to the trailer. Soon after, he learned that his former girlfriend and her pimp had both been arrested and that his son was now in foster care. He began running an open-pit barbecue stand on weekends, set up near the intersection of Caton and James Streets and at local events. It was during this period that Joe later claimed he used the flesh of his victims in his sandwiches, storing human meat in Tupperware containers mixed with pork and beef. No forensic evidence ever confirmed this. Investigators found no proof of cannibalism. These stories remain unverified, part of Joe's mythology rather than his documented crimes. On November 11, 1996, Joe met 26-year-old Kimberly Spicer at Uncle Walt's bar. Kimberly had argued with her mother earlier that day over drugs. Her brother had died from an overdose less than 2 weeks prior. She hitchhiked back with Joe to the trailer. There, he stabbed her 26 times. After killing her, Joe committed acts of necrophilia. He inserted an empty beer bottle into her body. He then wrapped her remains in a red tarp and hid her beneath a truck trailer on the pallet company property. Less than a month later, on December 8, 1996, 37-year-old Rita Keir went with Joe to the trailer. When she rejected his advances, she tried to flee. Joe beat her, threatened her, and said, "I am going to kill you and bury you in the woods with the other girls." Rita escaped through a window, cutting herself on barbed wire. She ran into the street and flagged down police. Her survival would unravel everything. On December 15, 1996, Joe was arrested while leaving a Christmas party at Martin's East. A co-worker had alerted authorities, reporting that Joe had asked for help disposing of a body. Police searched the trailer and found Kimberly Spicer's remains. Joe Stein, the owner of the pallet company, was also arrested as an accessory, accused of helping clean the trailer. Stein had a long criminal history, including burglary, using his son in robberies, trafficking stolen goods, and drug and gun charges. The charges against him in this case were eventually dropped. Years later, he received a 10-year sentence for arson in an unrelated crime. In custody, Joe confessed to 10 murders. Some could not be verified. He claimed he killed a man in a bar fight in 1976, 2 sex workers in 1988 and 1989, and 3 people buried under a bridge. In January of 1997, police took him back to several sites. Only clothing was recovered from one alleged burial location. He was also indicted for the murder of 28-year-old Tony Andrasia, a mother found stabbed and strangled on February 26, 1994, along the I-95 on-ramp near Caton Avenue, less than 3,000 feet from the pallet company. That charge would later be dropped for lack of evidence. Joe's trial stretched over more than 2 years. At first, he appeared remorseful. He said he was sick, that he needed help. He broke down in court when Kimberly Spicer's mother testified. But later, his demeanor shifted. He retracted his remorse. He tattooed an inverted cross on his forehead. He declared that he enjoyed killing and regretted only that he had murdered his former girlfriend and her pimp. In 1998, Joe Metheny was convicted of the murders of Kathy Magaziner and Kimberly Spicer, as well as the abduction of Rita Keir. Other charges were dismissed due to insufficient evidence. He requested the death penalty. Instead, he received life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Approximately 2 years later, the sentence was formally commuted. On August 5, 2017, Joseph Roy Metheny was found dead in his prison cell at the age of 62. The official cause of death was not publicly disclosed, though suicide was suspected. Today, West Baltimore continues to struggle, but signs of renewal exist. Old factories are repurposed, neighborhoods rebuild, life presses forward. Yet the legend of Joe Metheny lingers. The story of human meat sold at a roadside grill overshadows the far more disturbing reality. A man who stalked the vulnerable, who strangled, stabbed, and buried human beings, who reduced lives into rumors. In the end, it was not cannibalism that defined Joe Metheny. It was the way despair, addiction, and violence stripped away humanity, leaving only loss in their wake. And behind every myth, there remain names. Kathy Magaziner, Kimberly Spicer, Rita Keir, Randall Brewer, and others who never received justice.